Hello my fellow sun-dried pool noodles, I'm Mr. Church. In this video I'm going to be showing you a super easy to run, simple, and very tanky build for using in raids. You're not going to have the highest damage output with this build, but it's going to be very easy to stay alive in it, so it's going to be a good beginner build if you want to get into raids but you're a little nervous about doing so. I am running a full set of Overeaters powered Sentinel. This is just an Ultra Sight set, so you can definitely you can be a lot more tanky than this. This is not the strongest set. This is just the set I have that's Overeaters powered Sentinel. It's a lot easier to source boxes now to get a full set of armor going, so I don't feel like this set is prohibitive. It might take you a little while to get it together, but it's at least possible to do now instead of taking about 5 years like it used to. Obviously, Sentinels is still bugged, and so use at your own risk. I don't really understand. Sometimes I can definitely tell that it's not working. The weapons that I've been using is the Gauss minigun. With this character, I don't even know all the plans yet, so I'm still running standard barrel and all that stuff. So this is not as good as it can be. The main thing you want to do is get the VATS cost down, which is why I am using the less VATS cost. So I've got anti-armor, limb damage. This really helps to destroy the shield on the first encounter, and then this allows you to VATS that shield. So this is pretty fun, pretty yummy, pretty fun to use. The other weapon that I was using, this one actually does decimate the shield, is a pepper shaker with its quad so that I can fire for longer. Crippling, of course, and less VATS cost. This one is, I'm using a hex barrel, but I think the penta barrel's better, and this is another character that I don't have that plan unlocked on, so why don't you get off my back about it. One option for the second encounter, if you're defending the drill, is the Nuke launcher. This is a 2-shot, but it also does extra damage to mole miners, and it's also 90 reduced weight, so it's not too terrible to carry around. I have the heavy barrel on it and all that. The thing is, though, you don't necessarily need to kill those guys. The more you kill those, the worse they get. There's stronger and stronger ones. This is more like I carry it in with me in case they suddenly overwhelm me, then I can wipe them out quickly. But generally, you just want to slow them down. You want to kill the mole rats that have the bombs on them, and the rest you just kind of want to cripple them and keep them from going anywhere. So again, for the most part, in the second encounter, if I'm defending, I'm using this still just to keep them from getting to the drill, and you can keep them stuck in one spot pretty easily by just peppering them with this. Now for the actual build, because this is the actual reason why you clicked on the video. Actually, you clicked on the video because YouTube recommended it, and you're like, well, I don't really have the capacity to think of what I want, so I'll let YouTube do that for me. I hope that they were right, and if they were, consider subscribing because it's the best way to help this channel grow. Wow, you know, I'm getting better at putting that advertisement in there without anyone noticing. For this build, I have Legendary of Strength, Agility, Intelligence, Endurance, and Luck, so that I can run as many perk cards as possible. And then I'm also running Electric Absorption. This will keep you very tanky, especially during the first encounter and the third encounter when you're getting hit by energy weapons. This also refills your fusion core, so it helps with sustainability for your stuff, but it really does help with the healing especially. Now, during the last encounter, I take this off, so I unequip it, and I put on Funky Duds. So I put on Funky Duds. I only have this up to a 3-star, so it's only giving me 150 poison damage resist, but this does help during the last encounter. I want to add that the poison during the fourth encounter with the crystals doesn't actually count as poison damage, so Funky Duds doesn't help. That's just a flat damage that you take. I think it's 40 HP a second, standing in that green shit. So poison resist doesn't help until the very last round, and the spit attack that the snake does counts as ballistic and poison damage, so this will help a little bit with that, but I only put this on at the last second because up until then you don't really need it. Now when you have a legendary of these, they give you 5 of them, and you can only equip 15 perk points, but in the punch card machine you can still put on 15 you can still select 15 of that amount. If I put 15 points into endurance and have this, I'm actually going to have 20 base endurance, but I'm only going to be able to use 15 of those points, but the rest is going to apply to my overall stat. So with this build, I've put 14 into endurance, so I actually have 4 extra points of endurance that are just for the HP. So with this build, I have a couple of variations. I'm just swapping out a couple of cards depending on which of the encounters I'm in. I keep calling them encounters. I don't know what you want to call them. Level. Anyway, so I have Traveling Pharmacy because I have a million super stims. That goes without saying. In fact, I'm going to tell you my carry weight reduction perks right now through Hiker. I'm also running batteries included. I'm really happy about the reduction in how much these cost, which really helps being able to equip them. I'm not running Bandolier, and I'm only using energy weapons so that I don't have to use Bandolier, therefore carry around a bunch of ballistic ammo. That's why I have my Pepper Shaker running fusion cells instead of shotgun shells. Then, of course, I have all the heavy gunner perks. And then this one, I'm going to change depending on the encounter I'm in. So the first one, I'm going to have it as lock and load. For the second encounter, now I'm going to be switching out this lock and load perk card a lot of times during the later ones. But for the second one, if you're defending the drill and you want to use the nuke launcher, that counts as an explosive heavy gun, which means heavy gunner doesn't improve the damage of it, and you don't even really need to get the damage high on that. You're just trying to stun them and keep them in one spot. So if you want to do this, you can take off Heavy Gunner, and you can take off a couple of these. You can put on Ordnance Express in case you want to carry around the 40 millimeters and the nuke launcher in case you need to use it. And you can also keep lock and load on, and you can keep blocker on so that you take less damage from all their attacks. And you can also equip blocker so that if you're defending the drill, those guys won't kill you, and it's not going to help with the stalker if you're collecting fuel, but it will help for that. In Perception, I'm running Concentrated Fire 1, just so I can VATS the shield on the first guy, and it also will help, of course, VATSing. If you can use VATS later on the tail, on the eyeball of the snake, and stuff like that, you do want at least one of these. And I'm also running Grenadier because, for 2 reasons. One, it gives me a bigger explosion when I'm using the nuke launcher, which is going to be good. But it also makes the explosion on the Gauss minigun larger. So that'll help give the blasting happening. Now in Endurance, like I said, I put 14 points into Endurance. This says 15 because I actually have 19 full points of Endurance because I have the Legendary and then I have 14. So that means I can put a full amount on here, and this is just so that we can maximize our HP, and the reason why we want to maximize our HP is because we're using Life Giver. And what this does is it makes each point of endurance give us more HP. One of the things that you want to do when you're trying to be as tanky as possible is, instead of trying to pile up your damage resistances, which have a soft cap, you can actually try to pile up your HP points, because that's going to give you a lot more points until you're dead. Like, you're going to have to take more damage to die. So if you think about it that way, putting on HP is going to be more effective than putting on damage resistance after you hit a certain point. And you're going to be hitting at a certain point when you're in power armor anyway. So getting your HP as high as possible is one of the goals of this build. So Life Giver is one of the most important cards, and that's why we have the extra points into Endurance. Now, like I said before, I'm running Through Hiker, and I'm also running Natural Resistance. This is mostly just to help us with the poison resistance a little bit for the last encounter. But in general, it's just nice to run it just to keep all your bases covered. It does help with the cryo as well when you are on the third encounter. Thirst Quencher, this will give you more AP, which is going to be really important, especially if you're VATSing a lot. Bullet Shield is... Now, this is one of the more powerful Heavy Gunner perks that we have now. It's basically a second Ricochet. And what happens is you get a 20% deflect chance for 6 seconds when you're firing a heavy gun. Now, the cool thing about Ricochet is it actually is applying a lot of the the things that your weapon has to the thing that's shooting you. What do I mean by that? I don't know. Those aren't words. But if I were to put it in actual words, if you have a vampire's weapon and you're shooting the vampire's weapon, and either ricochet or bullet shield procs, which is the same effect, it's deflect, it deflects their damage back. If you're in power armor, it's deflecting 200% of the damage they're hitting you with back on them, and then you're taking 50% of that damage. So the first guy, when he shoots you, he does a shitload of damage. Imagine that, 200%. When ricochet goes off or bullet shield goes off and it hits him, it's doing an astronomical amount of damage because it's doing 2 times his damage to himself. Now, if you have a vampire's weapon and that goes off, it heals you because it procs the vampire effect. And what I've noticed is if you have weapons that do a lot of limb damage, which the shield counts as a limb, it does a lot more damage to the shield when a ricochet goes off. In fact, the fastest way to burn down the first guy's shield is a ricochet and bullet shield proccing when you have something equipped that does a shitload of limb damage. So that's why in the first encounter, I'm going to be using the pepper shaker until the shield's down, because I can stack up Enforcer, which is a shotgun perk, and One Gun Army, which is a heavy gun perk, and as well as it has the crippling effect on it. So it just does an astronomical amount of crippling, and so the second that this goes off, it's going to take a huge chunk off his shield. Starch jeans, you just need this on now, every time. Put it on your builds, for Christ's sake. Rejuvenated, the reason why I'm running this, because I'm running overeaters, I'm going to be staying at full health, at full fed and fully hydrated all the time, so that I can get the most out of that. And this will make it so that I will have more AP regen and more overall HP, which are 2 things I'm trying to get as much as possible. I do not need this card, but what happened is I got to a point where I don't actually need any cards because I have all the cards I want, and then I have extra points into endurance. So I just put this on, a little bit of extra damage and energy just to be funny. It doesn't really do that much because once you hit a certain amount, it doesn't do anything. And if you want an example of what I mean, I tried out some of the new armor effects in a custom world, and with a teammate, we were able to get up to 2,000 damage and energy resistance, and we were still getting shredded the same amount by the Guardian as with normal armor. So like after a certain point, you get diminishing returns, and those numbers don't mean anything. So that's literally for no reason. And then this is another one for no reason. Good thing you were up to date on all your 2,316 vaccines. I don't know what, I've never seen that before. Anyway, this doesn't matter. I don't even know if you can catch diseases in the raids because I don't know if anything in there is diseased. But, you know, if you're running around with this build on over the world, this will help you not get diseased, because remember, a lot of these don't work if you're diseased. This one doesn't work if you're diseased. This one doesn't work if you're diseased. And, of course, this one doesn't work if you're diseased. So that's fine. I just threw it on there. But you can run anything with those 2 slots if you want. Now, Charisma, this one is another one where I have some that I can swap out depending on what's going on. So first, Strange in Numbers. You want to keep that on all the time. This is one of the most powerful perk cards in the game. Just buffing all of your mutations when you're on a team is so powerful. And then Field Surgeon, this will make your stims really just blast up, and the speed that your stims work really does matter when you're taking a shitload of damage. So I really recommend running Field Surgeon. And then this one you can swap off. So if you want to do more damage, you can run Tenderizer. If you and your team are struggling to stay alive, you can swap that out for Team Medic. This is going to heal your teammates for 100% of the amount you're healing yourself. Now, this is important because the amount you're healing yourself is going to be insane, because you're going to be running First Aid. Now, this doesn't say on it how much more you're getting because it's based on your intelligence and because it scales with your intelligence, but they do have this thing now where you can look in your Pip-Boy under effects and you can see how much it's doing, and right there you see it is plus 49% stim pack healing. And I wanna add that the old card only gave you plus 45%. So this is already more than that old card gave, and I'm on a team by myself. I have strange numbers going. When that gets buffed, my intelligence is going to go up. For one thing, I have Egghead, so it's going to make Egghead go up to plus 8 intelligence. So I'm going to get 2 more intelligence there. And I also have Herd Mentality. That's going to give me plus 1 intelligence. So yeah, that's going to boost that shit. And that stim pack healing is going to be even more powerful. Now, I'm also only running super stims, and this is really heavy. That's why I'm running with Traveling Pharmacy. And if you think this is too expensive to get this amount of super stims, it's really not. If you open a bunch of mutated party packs, you're going to get a lot of them, and you're also going to see a lot of people that have opened these and they don't want them because they're heavy and they'll drop them. I found a bunch of these laying around. And then once you start doing the raids, you're going to get a shitload of these just from doing the raids. So what I do is every time I finish with a raid, I just drop all my normal stims and all my diluteds. And then every time I use a stim button, it just gives me a super stim, which is now a super stim being buffed by plus 50% healing or more. And then if you think about that affecting your teammates as well for that amount of healing, your whole team is going to stay alive much, much easier. Now I have power user just so I don't burn through my fusion cores too much. I have batteries included like I mentioned before, mostly just because of my fusion cores, but also because I'm only running with energy heavy guns, so my ammo's all energy, so it's all pretty heavy. This is important. Stabilized, it's not really important for the gun accuracy because we're going to be using VATS a lot anyway, now that they kind of helped us out and made it so heavy guns are viable in VATS with a couple tweaks. But the important part is the 45% armor negation. This will help us cut through that and do more damage. Demolition Expert does boost the damage of the Gauss minigun, and we're going to be using that as our weapon that we're shooting. So like the pepper shaker is going to be our crippler, so we're going to use it to cripple the moles that are running around, and we can use it also to break the shield. But when we're going to do actual damage, we're going to be using the Gauss minigun, and this will buff the damage of that. Now, in agility, I have Action Boy because getting our AP to regenerate faster is very important. I have a full set of powered armor and have this, and I'm going to be running Company T, but it's still good to have as much AP regen as possible if you're going to be in VATS. This is very important. Born Survivor, when you fall below 40% health, it'll automatically use a super stim. There'll be times when you're in VATS blasting, and so you don't have time to leave VATS and pop a stim, and this will proc and go off for you, and so then you don't die. It's pretty helpful, and it keeps you alive in those tricky situations. This is one thing I mentioned before, but in the instances where you're going to be focusing on breaking down shields, so the first one, and then in instances where you're trying to cripple, so the second one, I'm going to be running Enforcer, which makes your shotguns have a 30% chance to cripple a limb, and I'm going to be running One Gun Army, which has a 12% chance, so that adds up to 42% chance to cripple a limb, because the Pepper Shaker counts as a shotgun and as a heavy gun, and those effects stack. Once I'm done, once I do the first one and the second one, and I go on further, I have options where I can run Dodgy if I want to stay alive. You might not want to run this if you're going to be in VATS and if you're struggling with your AP regen, but if you blast a bunch of canned coffee, Dodgy is pretty helpful with that. You have a couple of other options, or you can just keep Enforcer on, and because there's not too much else we could really get value from. Adrenaline might work in the third encounter, and it might work with the moles if you want to kill them, but I don't recommend killing them. This won't be helpful during the first encounter, it won't be helpful during the last encounter, and it won't be helpful during the crystal encounter. So this one isn't really that helpful. It might help if you're breaking the healing drones and stuff during the third encounter. You might run this, but otherwise there's not too many options under agility for something in power armor. moving on to luck, like I said, we're only going to be running one gun army when we're trying to shred the shield and when we're trying to cripple. Once we get through that point of it, I'm going to be switching that out to Bloody Mess just to up my damage a little bit, especially when we go into the third encounter and we're just trying to kill those 3 boss guys. You're going to be wanting to do as much damage as possible, and that is how you're going to get that done. Otherwise, you're going to keep one gun army on, and then you keep Bloody Mess on for the last encounter as well. It doesn't really matter what you have on for the 4th encounter because you're not really doing anything but running around and directing traffic, although Bloody Mess will help you break those crystals faster if that's important. Now, Ricochet is one of the most important cards of the build. Like I was going on a big rant earlier, you get a chance to deflect based on your luck, and this is the same thing that's happening when Bullet Shield goes off. So when you have your Crippler equipped and the first encounter guy procs Ricochet, it's going to take a huge chunk off the shield. That's what's doing the most damage to the shield out of everything. And you can, again, look in your stats under effects. You can see what that chance is at. Right now it's at a 22% deflect chance. Now the old card gave you an 18% deflect chance, just a flat chance, but you can buff this with getting your luck up. So it's going to be over 24, 26 on a full team, and then you can do stuff to increase your luck as well. Like you can take some chems or food buffs and stuff if you want to get that deflect chance even higher. And keep in mind, you also have Bullet Shield. When you're firing a heavy weapon, you'll have higher chances on that as well. I like to run Class Freak to get my negative effects of my mutations down. This helps this be more manageable, especially if you have dumb stuff that's hurting you. Like Egghead is giving you minus endurance, stuff like that. If you have a mutation that's absolutely destroying your build, either don't run it or pop that mutation serum before you go in, and it'll negate the negative effects fully for an hour. And more on that in a little bit. Now, Crit Savvy, this is going to help when we go to do our actual vatsing damage. So you'll have low crit consumption, so you'll be able to pop the more often. And then you're going to have better crits. Those crits are going to do more damage. And then because both of our weapons have less VATS cost, we'll actually be able to use those weapons in VATS. Also, 4-leaf clover, when you miss in VATS, your crit meter is still going to go up. So whether or not you hit your shot, your VATS meter, your crit meter is going to be up, so you can constantly spam VATS. The last thing is Junk Shield. This is also, again, not really that important because once you hit a certain amount, you don't really need that much more damage and energy resistance. But you can certainly put this on. What I recommend doing if you're going to run Junk Shield is it caps at 100 pieces of junk. So you want to pick up like the lightest junk. So what I do is I pick up 100 screws or 100 cork. And the thing is, if you die in a raid, you're not dropping your junk. So it doesn't really matter if you carry that around with you. That's the lightest junk scraps you can carry, and that'll max it at like 120, 119 damage and energy resistance with the amount of luck that we have. But like I said, you don't actually need this. I don't feel that I need this. A lot of times I forget to pick up that junk, and it's annoying to, keep that at the right amount. So what you can do is you could also run Curator if you want to run a bobblehead buff like Heavy Gunner, or even Leader if you want to get more XP, or the Explosive one if you want to get more out of that. So something like this you could use to get more out of your bobbleheads. And you could also run Last Laugh if you're a fucking idiot. I don't know. Okay, I don't really know. But yeah, those are options there. Serendipity doesn't work in Power Armor, so it doesn't matter. But those are some options there if you don't want to run Junk Shield because it doesn't do that much. And like I said, I already talked about One Gun Army. That's the one we're going to be swapping out for Bloody Mess. That is the overall cards. And real quick, I want to also add the mutations that I'm using. I'm going to be using Bird Bones because you do have less fall speed and you get +4 agility, which is going to help with our AP. It's going to help with our VATS, therefore. But also, if you've never noticed, if you don't have Bird Bones and you jump and Power Armor and you land, you'll do the superhero landing constantly. which stuns you out of whatever you're doing and interrupts what you're doing. So it's very annoying. We have carnivore, so our food buffs can be better. Chameleon, we don't need that. That has nothing to do with the build. Eagle Eye is very important for the crit damage and the +4 perception. Egghead, I just have this just so I can get more XP. I wouldn't recommend running this if you're struggling with surviving because it does give you minus endurance. And if you do want to run it and you still are struggling with survival, again, you can just pop an egghead before you go in. One thing about these raids is you're getting a shitload of serums to the point where I'm just dropping them at this point every time you run it. So you will get a bunch of eggheads probably that you can then use. And then with Grounded, right now you can see it gives me +100 energy resistance. This gives me -13% energy damage, but the reason you don't see that is because I keep popping Grounded to keep that negative away. Remember, the only weapons I'm using are energy weapons. So this is just for more survivability, and like I've been bitching about, it doesn't actually matter. I don't really recommend running Grounded. Because you're not really going to be in a situation where you need that much more resistance. Like I said, we're kind of hitting that cap already. Otherwise, you know, you just have to keep eating that to keep that negative down so you can get the most damage out of your weapon. Healing factor, pretty good, but if you're going to be running any chems for any reason, like Psycho Buff for the survivability and damage, or even Berry Mentats for the XP, you're going to want to pop a healing factor to negate that negative chem effect so you get the most out of that. Herd Mentality is great to run on every single build. I recommend doing so because, as you can see, even though I'm on a team by myself, I still get the +2 specials, and there's not any negatives unless you're not on a team, which I always am. So, and then when you have strange numbers, that's +3 to all specials, and that includes endurance, of course. So it's really good for everything. Marsupial, I mean, who doesn't run that? Just fools and weird people. Scaly Skin, this one I don't actually recommend running either. This one is actually because I have another build on this character that I wanted it for. Because as you can see, it actually gives me -8 AP, so I'm probably going to pop a Scaly Skin to negate this, but I just recommend don't running it overall. That's not for this build. Speed Demon, just so that we can have the speed. Who doesn't want the speed? I want to give a big shout out and thank you to my patrons and channel members for your support. I wouldn't be able to do these fun, silly, stupid videos without you, and I really appreciate that. I do upload special stuff to my Patreon. If you're interested in joining me in that way, the link for that is in the description. I also stream on Twitch, and the link for that is in the description. And I also have a Discord server you could join in. Guess what? The link for that is in the description. I don't know what else to tell you. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.